Hi guys, and welcome to this lecture on photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Photosynthesis is so important because if you think about that burger you ate today, or maybe the fish you had last night for dinner, photosynthesis is how you were able to eat that fish and how you're able to eat that burger. We're going to talk more about that in a few slides. Also, cellular respiration is why you're living and breathing right now. It's why the plants in your home or maybe outside are living. It is such an important process for living organisms. And we're going to talk more about cellular respiration as well in this lecture video. All right, so what is this guy? Anybody know? It's a cute little thing, isn't it? Okay, take a guess. All right. What if I told you this was saving your life right now? You're watching this lecture video, and this guy is saving your life. Want to see another one? Here's two more. What are these? Saving your life right now. Very important. These are important for how your liver functions, your heart functions, your brain to function. These guys are important right now for you to be able to listen to this lecture video, to comprehend what I'm saying in this lecture video. These guys are why you're able to take notes during this lecture video. And I'm gonna guess you've never seen them before in your life. All right. Well, these are actually phytoplankton. And phytoplankton are going to be found in ponds and rivers and lakes and streams. And also they're very abundant in the ocean. And as you can see in these guys, we're going to talk more about this in this lecture, but you can see they're green. Both of these are green. And we're going to talk about why they're green and how they're functioning to help you live. So phytoplankton actually produce about 70% of Earth's oxygen. Yes, so these little guys in the ocean are doing photosynthesis, and they're providing you with the oxygen to breathe. But also the reason why you're breathing is so that your cells and tissues and organs can function properly. And so we're going to talk more about that when we get to cellular respiration. But these guys are providing the oxygen that's going to be very important in the process of cellular respiration. But they are actually doing photosynthesis and cellular respiration. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But over here, you can see that terrestrial plants actually provide Earth with about 30% of Earth's oxygen. So these phytoplankton are actually more important, you could say, than terrestrial plants. Now, does that mean we need to go about deforestation and whatnot? No, okay. I'm not advocating deforestation whatsoever, but I just want you to be aware that phytoplankton do photosynthesis as well as terrestrial plants. I think people know that, the tree outside is doing photosynthesis, the grass outside is doing photosynthesis, but I don't think that we're very aware sometimes that phytoplankton actually produce the majority of Earth's oxygen and are also doing photosynthesis. All right, so what is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis is the process of taking carbon dioxide, water, and light energy provided by the sun and turning that into glucose, which is going to be the food for the plant. And as a byproduct, it gives off oxygen. You're going to read more in your book about light-dependent and light-independent reactions. I'm not going to cover that in this lecture, but I do want you to know the equation of photosynthesis, okay? So I need you to know that the plant or phytoplankton, phytoplankton, take in carbon dioxide, water, sunlight, which is that light energy, and from that they create food, which is the glucose, and give off oxygen. And this process is very important because the plant will actually need to use the oxygen in cellular respiration, and animals need to use the oxygen given off by photosynthesis. All living organisms, in fact, all living organisms need to use this oxygen given off by photosynthesis in cellular respiration. Now, you may have taken a previous biology class and talked about anaerobic respiration. And so some organisms are able to produce energy without oxygen. But for the most part, photosynthesis is really, really important because it's going to provide organisms with the oxygen to do the next process I'm going to talk about, which is cellular respiration. The last thing I want to mention on this slide is everything that you see here is what we call a reactant. So for photosynthesis, the reactants are carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. And over here, on this side of the equation, these are our products. And I mentioned that oxygen was a byproduct, and basically what I mean by that is that the product that the plant uses here primarily is for that glucose, but it'll also use the oxygen as well. So sometimes we just call oxygen a byproduct. Okay, so we've talked about who does photosynthesis. We've talked about the equation of photosynthesis. We've talked about why it's important. Let me talk a little bit more about why photosynthesis is important. So I mentioned it's the reason why you're able to eat that burger or that fish, and that's because energy comes from the sun. And so these plants or phytoplankton are going, let's use plants for example, they are going to take that light energy and turn that into chemical energy. And so they're actually going to be able to take that and produce sugars with that. And that's how these plants or producers are able to stay alive. And what feeds on plants or producers? Well, that's going to be your consumers, and that cow that you are eating at dinner is a consumer. And so that cow relies on the grass to get its energy. And then you, in turn, eat the cow. So you rely on the grass to do photosynthesis to provide the cow with energy. Food. So if we use the aquatic example here, the phytoplankton will fuel or provide food for small fish. Those small fish are eaten by the larger salmon, and then therefore you were able to eat the salmon last night because the phytoplankton did photosynthesis, providing that small fish with food, and then that salmon with food, and then you were able to eat the salmon. So hopefully this makes sense as to why photosynthesis is so important. It's also very important because it's going to be on your quiz this week. Okay, so, and also on your midterm, just a FYI. So where does photosynthesis occur? That's going to be inside the chloroplast. So here you can see we have a plant cell, and you can see it's quite rigid in structure. It actually has a cell wall. Animal cells do not. And you can see these green structures are chloroplasts that are actually filled with chlorophyll. Now, chlorophyll is a light-absorbing pigment. And so what the chlorophyll does is it actually captures the sunlight to use as a reactant there in photosynthesis. And photosynthesis does occur inside that chloroplast. Now, you can tell when a leaf is no longer doing photosynthesis because it will change color. So in the fall, for example, you get those beautiful reds and yellows and oranges. And those colors, believe it or not, those pigments are actually there year round. However, but when the plant or the leaf there is doing photosynthesis, that chlorophyll is there present, capturing that sunlight, and it actually hides those colors, if you will, until that chlorophyll is no longer needed when the days get shorter and or the amount of daylight gets shorter. And remember, that's a reactant for photosynthesis. So if the daylight gets shorter and temperatures get colder, that both of those are cues for the plant to no longer produce photosynthesis or do photosynthesis. Okay, cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is happening in all living organisms. So if you were taking a seated class with me, I would point out my dead plants in the corner of the room. Don't worry, Johanna, your succulent that I have is still living. I have managed to water it. And my aloe plant is alive as well. But the rest of them have gone on. Yeah, they've passed away, unfortunately, because Ms. B neglected them. I know, terrible biologist over here. Those of you that are in the sustainability program, please don't announce that. I'm a plant killer around. But anyways, I try. My fish are still alive, okay, in the classroom, so I'm doing good there. I have 2 living plants, you know. Anyways, some of my plants in my classroom are not doing cellular respiration because they're no longer living. And Elvis, for example, not doing cellular respiration anymore. But as you sit here, you're doing cellular respiration right now. All living organisms do cellular respiration. So let's talk about the reactants in cellular respiration. So in cellular respiration, you need glucose plus oxygen through the process of enzymes. Gives us ATP, or energy, which is our goal in cellular respiration. carbon dioxide and water. And so the whole purpose of cellular respiration is to make this ATP. And this ATP is important for your cells to function. It's also important for a plant cell to function. So the plant cell we saw on the previous slide cannot function properly without that ATP. Without that energy, those cells are going to die. Those plant cells are going to die. And notice that the reactants here of cellular respiration are actually the products of photosynthesis. And so we take in food, which is going to provide us with the glucose. You breathe in oxygen, and your body has enzymes. And so the plant also gets its food in a different way. We don't produce our own food like plants do through photosynthesis, but we are what we call consumers. And so we take in our food and get energy that way, break that down into glucose. We take in that oxygen, and that's how we produce that ATP to make our cells function. And cellular respiration is important to keep an organism alive and to keep its cells functioning, its tissues functioning, its organs functioning, if it has any of those. Remember, organisms can be single cellular. Okay, so where does cellular respiration take place? Inside of a mitochondria. This is a terrible diagram, I am just realizing, because the mitochondria here are green. Why would you make the mitochondria green? Well, usually they're yellow in most diagrams, but the chloroplast is green because it has chlorophyll. Here they've just chosen to color these mitochondria green, so don't let that throw you off. But here you can see the mitochondria inside the cell, and the mitochondria are going to provide you with ATP. You've probably heard of them as the powerhouse of the cell, and they make that ATP via cellular respiration. Notice this is an animal cell here, so there are there's not a cell wall here.